Salutations and fist bumps, folks. Welcome back to the grid. I'm Joel, aka the Blood Grammar, and phase 4 was massive. I mean massive in terms of 54 hours of content. That's not even shaking a stick at everything that we had to do in phase 1 through 3. 54 hours of content, and I know that you didn't sit through all of the What If episodes and all of She-Hulk, so I did. So what I need you to do is sit down. If you're already sitting down, lay down.
Might as well get down and lay down.
Don't close your eyes because I need you to watch this video. Let's get right into it. First things first, we got to start with Loki.
Where's Loki?
Loki is the kicking off point for everything that we do inside of the MCU's Phase 4 going forward inside of the multiverse saga. Specifically speaking, because it happens because of what Sylvie does at the end of episode 6. We need to back up a little bit and explain where variance actually comes from, because this actually explains everything that happens in terms of variance. The TVA
Time Variance Authority,
based off of the fact that we have variants inside the MCU. Loki explains where variants come from. He Who Remains actually explains where the entirety of the idea of variants comes from. More specifically, it comes from the fact that he is warring against himself. And each time that he does that, it becomes a different branch inside of the multiverse. So this is literally why He Who Remains is even existing in the first place, because what he's trying to do is keep intact the sacred timeline that he himself has deemed to be correct. So a brilliant scientist discovers the multiverse, infinite number of universes. In each of those universes there are variants, other selves or other branches of yourself from other universes whose lives took different paths than your own. Not all variant of the scientists were nice guys and tried to conquer the others, creating cracks in the timeline. He then used those cracks in the timeline to create Elias.
That man is playing Galaga.
Weaponizes the Cloud Dog and creates a sacred timeline. Furthermore, creating the TVA afterwards, pruning any timeline not inside of the sacred timeline, the one that he prevented future versions of himself from, and then invents a story about aliens called the Timekeepers to try and keep all this intact. History then carries out and resumes. We get the Infinity Stones are created and all that kind of stuff in the Eternals. Massive space gods, which are basically celestials, are created or were already created, or however we're going about that. Their job was to reproduce stars and galaxies. That's the only thing they were supposed to do. So the way that they did that was planting seeds inside of planets. Planets. They plant seeds inside of planets. Seeds inside of planets. Then those eggs or those seeds become eggs, and those eggs then become babies or giant celestials inside of other planets. And when those giant celestials hatch, they literally destroy everything. That's exactly what was going to happen inside of Earth in the Eternals. But the Eternals stopped it. But there were created creatures called deviants to protect this human life. So basically, the entirety of the celestial baby, the egg that's placed inside of Earth at this point, is only there because humans exist. And if humans don't exist, the hatching of the egg doesn't actually happen. So the reason why deviants were even created in the first place was to keep intelligent life force on the planet so that the celestial baby could then gain power. Are you catching all this?
Get it? Got it? Good.
Inside of that, the deviants then went rogue, and Eternals were then born in their place. Eternals were called or are called artificial intelligence or an artificial life form.
We seem to be made to suffer. It's our lot in life.
To fight the rogue artificial life form, the deviants. So one artificial life form fighting the other artificial life form, and both of them warring against each other pretty much. 12 Eternals. We won't go into all of them because that's just a video in all of itself. But there's 12 of them in total. We won't get into the specifics of all of that symbolism and all that kind of stuff, but there is a little symbolism there. 12 Eternals in total with a special power to fight off deviants given to each of them specifically. Eternals are famous and become repeated in myths for centuries. This is basically where we get all of the things that the Eternals have done over time and how they are perceived inside of lore across centuries and all that kind of stuff. But the Eternals have no idea that there is a celestial egg or a celestial baby inside of the earth ready to hatch at any given moment. And when they figure it out, they then try to defeat the deviants, but Richard Madden decides that Salma Hayek is not going to carry out the plan that she had.
Oh, we ain't gonna be in no fire, not today.
When she finds out that humans actually took care of Thanos. And she has a change of heart. She doesn't really want to destroy human life or anything like that anymore. So she's basically saying, let's give them another chance. And Icarus, Richard Madden, is not having any of that. So he has her killed by the remaining deviants on Earth. But those deviants take on her powers and start to war against the Eternals. We also then lose Gilgamesh. R.I.P. Gilgamesh as well, because of him fighting for Angelina Jolie, Thena.
You got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em.
Deviants become deviants because of the fact that they are trying to understand what is going on with the Celestials, and they then tell the Eternals that you are basically just carbon copies of the same thing over and over and over again, and Cersei actually figures that out. And when she does, they then form this Unimind, basically trapping this celestial baby inside of the Atlantic Ocean with its head in its hand sticking out, becoming an island for the entirety of the MCU, but nobody talks about it. Oh, Eternals broke up after colonialism, which brings us into ancient Egypt or Moon Knight. And in ancient Egypt, these powerful beings interfere with humanity, and people believe that they are gods, or more specifically, the Eternals are looked at as gods. And then inside of that, we get an Egyptian gods as well inside of these stories. These folks are Khonshu and Ammit, specifically the two that we are highlighting inside of Moon Knight. Khonshu, the moon god, Ammit, judge of souls in the afterlife, or specifically, she tries to eat the souls of the world.
They ate me! A dog ate me!
And the other guys then imprison her inside of a statue.
2,000 years later.
After all that stuff with Moon Knight has happened, Wen-Wu finds 10 powerful rings from space, which again is linking to Kang, but that's a different video and a different time of the channel. He uses them to conquer parts of China and form a criminal organization, the Ten Rings, which is given to him, obviously, ironically, by the same name, until he meets a woman from a different dimension. He stops doing evil, they wrestle, they fall in love, they have kids, play some DDR, and she is then killed. He starts back on the evil path again, trains his son to become a deadly assassin. He sneaks away to San Fran, changes his name to Sean, and then sings karaoke and hangs out with Awkwafina all the time. Fast forward through time, first 3 phases go by. So the Avengers and all the stuff inside the Infinity War and Endgame and all that, and we are back into the present. Wait, hold on, we had to go back to the 90s though, because Natasha Romanoff is a Russian child spy living with a family of spies in Ohio. She has a fake dad and a fake mom. Her and her sister are both trained in the Red Room, which is basically the Black Widow training facility to become an assassin. Recruited by Clint and S.H.I.E.L.D., and her first mission is to destroy Dreykov, which is her former boss. But instead, or in the wake of everything, she actually kills, or believes that she's killing his daughter instead. She then joins the Avengers. Civil War happens and the split ensues, goes rogue, and then goes on the run. Yelena, her sister, is being still controlled by Dreykov and the Black Widows. A special gas then frees her. Natasha and Yelena go on a mission to kill Dreykov, free the other widows. They track down their spy dad, who could have been way more powerful than Captain America, so he says.
Still fits.
And their spy mom, Iron Maiden, team up to then take down Dreykov, free the widows, bring down the Red Room, and go up against Taskmaster, which we find out the Taskmaster turns out to be Dreykov's daughter. Meanwhile, Nat gets a haircut, borrows Yelena's vest with a whole bunch of handy pockets, and fast forward through Thanos, Infinity Stones, the snap, 5 years later, and we're at the present again. Tony, Gamora, Nat, Vision are now dead.
Hey, this one to all my dead homies, you know what I'm saying?
Thor is now fat, Cap is old, and the Earth now has more people than it did before. Only in America. Peter Parker fights Mysterio and has his identity revealed. Wanda and Vision have been in a relationship for about 2 years, or at least around the time of Ultron, or the Age of Ultron, around that time. In that time, Vision bought her a plot of land inside of Westview so they could grow old together, until Thanos decided to turn back the hands of time and 5 years later, post-blip, Vision's body is being examined by SWORD. If you don't know who they are, check this video out right here. When Wanda sees Vision dismantled, she freaks out and creates a magical hex around the small town called Westview. The hex mind controls people into behaving as if they were inside of a sitcom from Wanda's childhood. She then also creates a new Vision from her memory of Vision and the Mind Stone, bringing two malevolent forces to the town because of the pocket sitcom reality that she just created. SWORD sets up a perimeter to study what's going on inside the town, comprised of Jimmy Woo from Ant-Man, Darcy from the Thor movies, grown Monica Rambeau as Photon or Captain Marvel, haven't figured out which one yet, Agatha Harkness as well, and she comes in and is messing with Wanda within the hex all along.
My God, I was wrong.
It's been Agatha all along.
Monica gets her powers after going through the hex a few times. We also learned that Wanda has already had her powers since she was a child. And inside of the Mind Stone Vision, she actually sees herself as the Scarlet Witch. Meanwhile, SWORD creates their own version of Vision, White Vision, sends him through the hex, and has a heart-to-heart with the hex version of Vision, and basically becomes the real version of Vision at the end of it. Wanda then gains full control over her powers, trapping Agatha inside of her sitcom reality, then releases Westview from her hex and loses her kids and Vision in the process. Sam doesn't really believe that he can live up to the hype of the legacy of the shield, so he donates it to a museum, which then pisses off Bucky and becomes even more livid at Sam than he already usually would have been.
Couldn't have done that earlier.
I hate you.
But he believes that Sam isn't living up to the wishes that Steve, his best friend, had for the shield and for the legacy of Captain America. The government then takes no time at all, giving it to the first Joe Schmo off the street that looks like he could possibly hold a shield, John Walker. They then go after a terrorist group called the Flag Smashers, which basically like things the way that they were after the snap, pre-blip, before everyone came back. But their leader has also taken super soldier serum as well. So Bucky breaks Zemo out of jail. He goes out on the town for a bit and dances. And they head to Madripoor, an anything goes type of country. Sharon Carter is there and is either working for or is the power broker. They track down the guy that created the super soldier serum, but the secret dies with him, similar to the way that it died with Erskine in Captain America 1. Walker then finds some of the serum and subsequently kills a guy. So remember that one time Loki stole the Tesseract in Endgame? That's what we're going to pick up right here. And specifically, that created an alternate branch in the timeline, which is dangerous. And inside that dangerous timeline, that threatens the sacred timeline mentioned earlier from He Who Remains. So inside of that, Loki is a now variant arrested by the TVA. Mobius then recruits him to track down a variant of himself, Loki, in Sylvie. Mobius pours his heart out to Loki and tells him he really, really just wants to find some jet skis and go jet skiing.
Because they're awesome.
Sylvie wants to then kill the timekeepers because they ended her reality. That's the main reason why she goes on a rampage throughout the timeline trying to find the timekeepers, because they took her timeline from her, she says. They find out later that the timekeepers are nothing more than just robots. Loki is then pruned. Goliath is now running rampant inside of the pruned area of the timeline, specifically in the void. Mobius realizes that the timekeepers are a lie and tries to come back and make amends for whatever is going on inside of the TVA. Loki and Sylvie find the place of He Who Remains after opening a portal. He Who Remains is absolutely bonkers from being alone for so long. He wants Sylvie to take over and keep the timeline up, but Sylvie then kills him instead, and the timeline then branches and multiple branches in the timeline are created. Ravonna Renslayer, who is a key cog in the Kang story, if you don't know, but talks to Miss Minutes and mentions that he thinks this is better.
Who? Happy reading.
So she goes off in search of this person, whoever this happens to be. She doesn't know that it's Kang. She doesn't know that it's He Who Remains. She doesn't know who he is, but she's going off inside of the timeline to go search for him. And Mobius doesn't know who Loki is after he comes through the other side of the timeline after being pruned from Sylvie. And that's when we find out that He Who Remains, or the evil variant of He Who Remains, is now on the scene, which is now in this case Kang. And when Sylvie does what she does, she literally breaks the entirety of the multiverse and the timeline itself. And when she does this, we now see multiple different variants of the timeline, and specifically someone who is keeping track of it, the Watcher, inside of What If. And inside of these timelines, there are a bunch of different variants. There are zombies, a place where Ultron gets all of the Infinity Stones and wins, and also a portion of the multiverse where the Watcher assembles a bunch of different heroes from different timelines and realities to stop Ultron from doing what he's trying to do, which is annihilate the entirety of the fabric of the timeline and the multiverse. Similar to the way that What If shows us how a bunch of different timelines can coexist or not coexist inside of the same thing, Spider-Man shows us similarly the same type of deal, which is basically where Peter is being attacked on every area of his life after Mysterio reveals his identity in the media. J. Jonah is literally going rampant on everything that is Peter Parker now, harassed on the street, friends left completely out of college because of him or the fact that they know him, and a really good lawyer named Matt Murdock gets him out of trouble with the DODC. Once slightly out of hot water, he heads, or more specifically in hot water but out of it at the same time, heads to Doctor Strange to ask for magical help to make people forget that he is Spider-Man. Strange's spell goes completely wrong and draws in people who know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
What's happening? They're starting to come through and I can't stop.
Me personally, if I was going to wish for anything inside of that movie, I would have wished to see Kirsten Dunst being drawn in. That just would have been a cool fan thing to see. Not necessarily would have added to the story at all, but it probably just would have been a nice fan service to add here if we were just adding fan service to begin with. Villains from other Spider-Man movies and universes come into his reality. Peter tries to cure them all, but Green Goblin kills Aunt May, and Peter hears the indelible words that are inside of everyone's brain.
You have power, and with great power,
there must also come great responsibility.
which is actually a comic accurate variant of that line. So just a fun fact there. Peter is then joined by Spider-Man from other realities, this guy, and this guy.
Great, it's just some random guy.
The cures are then working, but the spell is getting out of control after Goblin's bomb goes off inside the box holding the spell, bringing everyone in and tearing holes in the fabric of the universe. Strange then has to complete a spell that wipes the memory of everyone that knows Peter is Spider-Man, which then includes his connections to Happy and Stark Tech. Peter is now friendless and has no acquaintances. They're all gone. He moves into a dumpy apartment and adapts his suit back to his cloth suit and ends toward Christmas, which, if you're talking about Christmas around New York, we have to talk about Hawkeye. So Hawkeye is just enjoying some New York time with his kids, watching musicals.
Could do this all.
And still not over the death of Nat. But we then introduce Kate Bishop, who is basically a Clint superfan, is basically saved by Clint because of inside of the battle for New York inside of 2012. She is basically his #1 fan. Clint inspires her to become a master fighter and marksman and accidentally runs or steals the Ronin suit when she comes into contact with a underground auction, making her the target for an underground organized crime unit, the Tracksuit Mafia, which also usually fight this guy. You see, Clint went around killing bad guys around the time of Endgame when he lost his family. It is revealed that Kate's mom is also working with the guy that is the main puppet ring leader of everything that is going on around the New York City crime circle. Basically, he again usually fights this guy. Kingpin, his name, is basically in cahoots with Kate's mom and Kate's mom is instructed to hire Val, who enlists Yelena to take out Clint Ronin, and basically because of so let's give a little bit more backstory to Yelena in this case, because she has blipped and come back. Nat is now dead. Widows are freed. She now blames Clint, and this seems as her only way to get revenge, as well as she can't stop eating macaroni and cheese.
I made macaroni if you want some.
Yelena and Clint fight. They then make up.
She talked about you all the time, Elena.
She did?
And Clint, Kate, and some wonderful cosplayers take out the Tracksuit Mafia. Maya then blinds Fisk. And Clint and Kate return to burn the Ronin suit and pass on the Hawkeye mantle to her. Now let's move on into some multiversal stuff, shall we? Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, multiversal jumping girl named America Chavez is introduced. And inside of this, we see her superpower is opening portals to the multiverse, looking for a way to understand her own power to get the leap back home is basically what she's trying to do. If you don't know about her, she's basically a mutant or a time jumping variant that has the power to go into the multiverse whenever she pretty much wants to, just by opening a portal. The Scarlet Witch, though, wants to steal her powers because what she wants to do is move through the multiverse where her kids actually are produced and actually live. Doing that would actually cause incursions and all kinds of stuff. What she wants to have access to is America's powers because she wants to do multiversal travel without any boundaries. At least for right now, the only way that she can do it is by accessing it through the Darkhold, and specifically we saw that first in WandaVision. But because of her access to the Darkhold, this now makes her very evil at this point and channels the Elder Gods Chthon's magic into what she's doing as well. So Doctor Strange and Wong now save America's life. Scarlet Witch attacks Camertage, and a lot of wizards die in the making of this battle. America and Strange go on a trip through the multiverse. Landing in a universe governed by the Illuminati, which are all different variants of the same characters we know from other universes, some familiar faces and other from some fan casting, of course. We then learn more, or more specifically learn about incursions where one world collides and one must be destroyed to save the other. The Darkhold can be used to dreamwalk, which then creates incursion. That action is super evil, and again, like I said, it causes incursions where Wanda then dreamwalks into that reality and destroys, dismantles, disarrays the Illuminati without even breaking a sweat. She then kidnaps America to steal her powers. Strange and a variant of Christine fight an evil variant of Strange. Strange then dreamwalks into a dead variant of himself, which causes an incursion.
Another one.
America controls her powers for the very first time and sends Wanda into a portion of the multiverse that sends her in front of her kids to scare them. When she does, she snaps out back to reality.
Oh, there goes gravity.
She destroys the Darkhold and the temple that goes, or the temple that was made in her honor. But is she really dead though? I don't think so. There's a lot of speculation there and a lot of things that have been said about what Elizabeth Olsen's contract is looking like, but we'll have to see. In the end credit, Strange is cool over Christine. He's not really caring about her anymore. She's married. But he meets Charlize Theron, who explains he's caused incursions and he now needs to fix it. Back to the Golden Gate Bridge.
I'm going back to Cali.
When Rue is heading the 10 rings again, he then sends his henchmen to snag his son, who is now basically long lost at this point, and by osmosis Aquafina. They go on the run and find Shang's sister, who runs a fight club ring. We see Wong fight the Abomination for money, but it's actually a hoax pretty much.
That hurt.
Slight scam that they're running pretty much here, but they don't go into it that much in the movie. We won't do it here either. When Wu takes them back to China after capturing them, he tells them that he's trying to free their mother, and Shang and his sister are basically like, that's not actually real. They don't believe him, and they head out with Iron Man 3's Trevor and Morris to find Tai Lo. They find the mystical land first before when Wu does, and Michelle Yeoh is there, and she tells them that they're actually guarding the wall to keep the dragon that is behind it staying behind it, because that is what is tempting Wen Wu to try and open the gate, which is basically what's happening. Is he is being mind controlled or called after, seemingly in the voice of his wife, but not necessarily actually her. Is actually the demon or the dragon that is calling out to him and portraying to be his wife, but not actually being him. A battle ensues. Wen Wu's forces show up and go to war with Tai Lo. He opens the gate. Demons start sucking out souls. We get a good dragon sighting, and Shang-Chi controls the 10 rings for the very first time. When he does it though, it sends out a signal cosmically, which Wong then comes back and tells him at the end of the movie in the post-credit that that is basically what happened, and when he used it for the very first time, they felt it. Evil dragons are defeated. His sister takes over the empire, RIP Wen Wu, and around the earth there are a bunch of earthquakes that are happening at the same time because the celestial baby is about to hatch. Insert the Eternals here, and Cersei and Robb Stark break up. She gets with Kit Harington briefly because he's not really in the movie that long.
What?
Don't worry about it. He's just not in the movie that long. Selma Hayek is the leader of the Eternals. She then tells Richard Madden that they were going to hatch a celestial baby and destroy the Earth, but when seeing what the humans have done with Thanos, she has a change of heart. Richard Madden actually has her killed because of that. What actually happens with that is the deviants that were left on the Earth kill Selma Hayek and take her powers and become, and then adapt to try and take over and kill the Celestials, or more specifically I should say the Eternals, and tries to kill the Eternals. When this plan is foiled, once they figure out basically that they are just carbon copies of the same robot throughout centuries, they perform or create a Unimind and then take or destroy Tiamat and basically turn him into a stone inside of the ocean, which the MCU really barely talks about inside of the entire phase of Phase 4. Aside from that one clipping inside of She-Hulk. Afterwards, the team splits, and some go to be judged by Arishem, others are going to warn other Eternals that Celestials are actually evil, or they then are greeted by a time-jumping troll and Thanos' brother, who was actually Eternal as well, and that means that Thanos was a robot?
What?
Anyway, moving on, Moon Knight, and man, this phase is so freaking long. Moon Knight is a mercenary named Mark, has an abusive childhood. He invents alternative egos for himself, which in the first is Stephen Grant, which is who becomes Mark Spector later on, or is Mark Spector later on, whatever. After an accident with an archaeologist almost cost his life, Mark lives, or is then agreeing to live his days becoming the Moon Knight, or the avatar for Khonshu. Mark marries Layla, who is the daughter of the archaeologist that was killed, but she doesn't know that. Mark was different, or Mark has different personalities, and eventually Steven realizes that there is someone else living inside of his head, so there's a war going on between him and himself. Ethan Hawke forms a cult-like following to the god Ammit. They are trying to free her. Mark and Layla and Steven go on a treasure hunt, trying to find the first tomb. Ethan Hawke finds them before they do, shoots Mark Steven, and in the afterlife they meet a hippo goddess working through the symbolism of everything that they're going on, or everything that is going on in that episode, resolving their issues, and then come back to life. Layla becomes a hippo goddess avatar, and Ethan Hawke frees Ammit. She then fights Khonshu, and Khonshu agrees to free Mark and Steven, but there's always
My friend, Jake Lockley.
Toca perder.
Wait. Yeah. Moving on, Miss Marvel. Heading over into New Jersey, we have a teenager, Kamala Khan, who enjoys making YouTube videos about her favorite hero, Captain Marvel. Her great grandmother is a Jinn, which is basically an alien from another dimension. In the 1940s, they come to Earth and they find a bangle in the Temple of the Ten Rings. That power from that temple of the Ten Rings is power enough to send them home. That basically is foiled by Kamala's grandmother or great-grandmother. They would destroy Earth. If they did that, though, if they decided to go back in time and go back home, they would destroy Earth. Kamala's grandmother decides to fall in love and create a family. Instead, the Jinn catch up to her and kill her during the partition of India and Pakistan. She decides to sneak out one night, and the bangle activates powers that Kamala never really knew that she even had. Kamala slowly adapts to her new powers and goes up against Damage Control, or DODC, which is the same guys that are going up against Spider-Man in No Way Home. Kamala meets the other parts of the Jinn race and also a half Jinn guy that she then falls for. She also fights the other Jinns before going to Pakistan, meets the Red Daggers. They protect her, or they protect Earth from the evil Jinn. She then helps her friend understand his powers and harness them as well. So he is also a Jinn. So if you didn't know, that's kind of how that all kind of falls together. And she finds out that she is not just powerful because she has the bangles or she's a Jinn, but because she's a mutant. And later, her bangle activates, switching places with Captain Marvel, which then leads us into all of the cosmic things that we have going on inside of Thor: Love and Thunder. Thor travels with the Guardians, loses the weight that he puts on inside of Phase 3. Meanwhile, there's an alien named Gore, whose daughter dies from thirst and starvation. When he prays to his gods to help, they basically mock him, and he is then possessed by the Necro Sword and makes a vow to kill all gods. All of this happens while Jane is battling stage 4 cancer. Thor and Jane drifted apart because they both feared losing that which they loved, so they basically just decided that they weren't going to lose anything and parted ways. Thor tells Mjolnir to watch over Jane. It then calls to her when she's sick from New Asgard. Jane becomes the mighty Thor. Gore attacks Asgard, kidnaps all the children. Thor and the crew head on a journey to Omnipotent City and accidentally kills Zeus. And Jane tells Thor that she has cancer. Gore, being the benevolent guy that he is, sets up a trap for them the whole time, which is basically he was trying to get the Bifrost to where he is so that he could travel to the middle of time, which is basically eternity, and make one wish to kill all God. But Thor convinces him to instead bring his daughter back and decides that he is going to raise her as his own, which basically is where we get another part of the Young Avengers, potentially love. Jane shows up and helps in the fight and dies. Staying in space though, we are greeted with the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, and the Guardians have now taken over Nowhere, which is actually specifically from the comics, former home of the Collector. They use it to fight galactic evil. The planet is currently being admin by a telekinetic dog named Cosmo, and Quill is sad because Gamora is gone. And Drax and Mantis decide that they're going to go on a Kevin Bacon kidnapping spree to bring their friend some holiday cheer for Christmas. So they kidnap Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon decides to stay on Nowhere to help bring Christmas cheer. More family secrets come out around the dinner table because Mantis reveals that Ego is her dad as well, and she is actually Quill's sister.
What?
Now let's head back on down into Earth, where we meet She-Hulk Jen for the very first time while living an everyday life. She spending time with her well-mannered cousin Hulk, Professor Hulk, Bruce Banner, whatever you want to call him at this point. And Bruce and Jen get into a car wreck because of a Sicarian ship that gets in front of their path. Some of Bruce's blood then leaks into her own wound, and she becomes a Hulk at that point. But different from her cousin, she's a pretty calm Hulk at the beginning. She's different in the fact that she has practically had to deal with these same emotions all of her life, so she pretty much knows how to use them or curtail them when she needs to. However, she does find it hard to find her footing between the conflict of interest repping the Abomination after accepting the new job, because the Abomination actually tried to kill her cousin inside the beginning portions of the MCU. But she also has some pretty fun and lighthearted moments because of the fact that she is a Hulk. She can drink a little bit more.
Captain America!
She also has a lot of run-ins with that same thing when she's decreasing her size as well. So she has to really understand when she's intaking alcohol how much she actually did. But along the way, she has some fun is what I'm trying to say. And inside of the entirety of this series, she is always, and I mean always, breaking the fourth wall, letting us know whose show this really is.
Just remember whose show this actually is.
Bruce goes to space. Wong shows up many times. Daredevil teams up with Jen, does the walk of shame. And we can't forget the best character in the show.
Within the known and unknown universe.
Madison.
Case closed.
Jen gets the Abomination out of jail, and he then starts his own love cult. After that, in the end, a big ridiculous fight happens. Jen talks through the fourth wall, travels into Marvel Studios, talks to the creator of all Marvel content, a robot named Kevin. They have a conversation where Jen rewrites her ending. Bad guys are arrested. Hulk shows up with a son at a family barbecue because of family. Wong breaks the Abomination out of jail because they are best friends. Werewolf by Night is now up, and I am talking so fast I don't even know what is going on right now because this phase is so long. Okay, Werewolf by Night. I'm gonna do this as fast as I possibly can. Monster hunter named Ulysses Bloodstone dies. Estate holds a competition for Bloodstone between different monster hunters, including daughter Elsa Bloodstone. Secret werewolf named Jack Russell is basically around the entirety of the story, or the main character of the story. The competition is to find a monster on the grounds of the Bloodstone Manor. Turns out that the monster they are looking for is Jack's best friend, Man-Thing. He tries to rescue his friend, but is found out in the process. They are then captured. Jack and Elsa are then fighting off other monster hunters, but when they are captured, both of them are placed inside of a cage. Jack then turns into a werewolf and decides to go on a killing spree inside of the manor. Elsa inherits the Bloodstone and the entire manor. Jack and Man-Thing drink their cup of coffee and sitting on a log at the end of the series, and moving on into Wakanda Forever. Wakanda Forever is now the newest global superpower, the only nation with the most powerful mineral in the world, vibranium. But the nation is in mourning because they have now lost their king, T'Challa. Shuri blames herself because she could not recreate the heart-shaped herb and is angry at the world, and actually tells her mother that she wants to burn everything and everyone inside the world because she's just that angry. Other nations have developed machines to find the mineral under the sea, enlist the help of a brilliant college student at MIT named Riri Williams, attacked by a race of water-breathing sea people hailing from Talokan about 500 years earlier. Around the time that the Eternals split up, Mayans were being slaughtered by colonizers, so one of their gods led a shaman to a vibranium-fed plant, allowing them to breathe and thrive underwater, building their own kingdom, Talokan. The firstborn of this race of people was Kukulkan, otherwise known as Namor. He can fly, he's super strong, he's really only weakness is being out of water for too long and basically practically being diffused. Builds a thriving city using vibranium found under the sea. Namor threatens to attack the surface world and Wakanda if they don't track down the scientists who made the vibranium. Wakanda asks Everett Ross to help them find the scientists, who he does. Everett Ross gives up Riri with no problem. Shuri heads to Talokan and finds that the people there are actually pretty nice. Namor even gives her a bracelet that is woven from the fibers of the vibranium plant. Queen Ramonda then sends Nakia, former lover of T'Challa. She then kills one of the Talokans, sparking a war between Wakanda and Talokan. Huge battle ensues between the nations. Queen Ramonda then dies. Ross and Val are revealed to used to be married. What? She knows that he's been committing treason and places him under arrest because of his dealings with Wakanda. Wakandans prepare for war against Namor and the Talokans. Shuri is revealed as the Black Panther after successfully creating the heart-shaped herb. Riri also makes her own appearance as a new Iron Man suit, or new Iron Man variant in this case. The battle does go not that well for Wakanda, but Shuri comes out on the other end because of her science skills and fusion and all that kind of stuff. She also rips one of his ankle wings completely off of his ankles, and that is painful. But in the end, they decide to make peace between their nations, forming an alliance in case the colonizers try to come for them again. And that leads us into a more specific storyline into Captain America 4 and the Thunderbolts, coming up in phase 5 and 6, or more specifically phase 5. M'Baku,
Leader of the Jabari,
possibly now, is king of Wakanda, and Shuri goes off and reflects about her brother meeting her long-lost nephew, T'Challa Jr. Wow. And that, my friends, is the full gamut of Phase 4. Did I miss anything? Did I lose you? Hopefully not. If you did find any piece of evidence in terms of something that you did not know before, hit that like button right now and go ahead and subscribe. If you want to know more about the MCU and going forward and all the magical messiness that is the multiverse, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, because you won't want to miss any of the breakdowns that we do on this channel. So until next time, until next video, blurred out.